if I sit. Alright, that's gonna have to do, I think. That's as good as we're gonna get. So, throughout school, I knew I liked doing art stuff. I wrote stories, I acted in plays, I read joke books in my spare time, and life kept telling me, you need to find something. And even throughout theatre, in school I found I was semi-decent at theatre. It was the thing I was doing the best at, but I struggled remembering lines with general memory, and I sort of wanted to write the scripts myself. And with the comedy side of things, I knew I wanted to entertain and perform, but the more I've looked into people pleasing and things like that, the more I enjoy creating stuff just as much as doing it for other people. And I've been writing stories, I've been writing as long as I can remember. I mean, we all like to have the narrative that we grew doing it, we were born doing it, we existed and we've been doing it ever since. But my story actually kind of goes a bit more, up until I left school, I wanted to be an actor because I thought I had to do whatever I was best at in school, and I was alright, but it wasn't great. And it was when I tried to go to university through acting that I realized I didn't love it as much as I felt I needed to love it. Then I discovered that comedian is actually a job, but reality being reality, it's really hard financially to be a comedian. Also, through other things, I found that when I performed comedy on stage, everything was lighthearted and everyone was my best friend. And I was a very people person, but I was also a very people pleasing person. Whereas when I wrote, that was my real feelings and thoughts being dramatized. So the filter was gone and the real, honest, emotional truth underneath came out. And I always noticed that with comedy, it was light. And for whatever reason, I couldn't write a funny story. All of the stories were dramatic, attempting for some sort of emotional intensity. All the stories wanted to really go there. What I found was when I wrote jokes, it was all light-hearted, shallow stuff about TV shows that I'd seen. When I wrote stories, that was my real emotionally dramatic psychology coming through. And I think the idea of telling people they need to have one job, one career, their whole life is a disservice, especially when people have ADHD and we like to jump around, right? I still want to learn piano, learn instruments in general, get better at drawing. I want to go back to what school was like with the arts, where you could do a bit of everything and there was no pressure to make that one thing your main thing. That being said, since school, I've had these stories in my mind that I've been working on for ages, and I'm still working on them. They're a long way away. But I started really cracking down. I think COVID, my dad passing away at 59, so retirement is not a guarantee. It just gets you to start thinking. People are always saying you don't have forever. The trouble was, for the scope that I am planning for what I want to do, I want to take as long as possible to make sure it's good. And there is perfectionism in that, which is why I think I've started the YouTube thing. The YouTube thing is a way to keep myself accountable and at the very minimum least, remind myself that I need to get something done to finish things regularly at least once a week. Even if that's the last minute, turning the phone on and recording something, to just be able to say to myself, you have kept that up and you have kept that up consistently, is really something. And to that end, I want to dig a little deeper into the insane creative projects that I've been trying to do. When COVID happened, I wanted to learn more words. And so when the lockdown happened, I thought, I've got all the time in the world now. I'm going to go do that. And I'd heard a rumor that Eminem had memorized the dictionary, and I thought, I want to do that. I don't know how he did it. I'm sure he had some actual memorization techniques. What I did was I took this dictionary, which you can now see is completely battered and lost all color, because I have destroyed this thing. because I sat during COVID and I wrote out every word in the dictionary. Not the definitions, I just wanted lists. Because it has bugged me that there is no list of verbs. I know it can never be complete because the English language is constantly evolving, but it baffles my mind that we have all of these words in alphabetical order for you to find if you can already spell them, and then you get their definition. So you have to know the word, you have to know how the word sounds, you have to know how to spell the word, and then you look up what it means. At that point, surely you already know what it means. What I find more lacking is just a dictionary of words. Like, where's the only verb dictionary? Where's the only adjective dictionary? And then, rather than set them in alphabetical order, set them in categories. I suppose that's an encyclopedia, but look how big an encyclopedia is. Because they list every noun, everything, every whatever. And it's gotten to that extent, like actually writing this all down, realizing there was plenty missing because they didn't include like words with ing on the end. So it has expanded beyond my control, and there probably is something to that. It's probably why encyclopedias are as big as they are. But the fact that I wrote it down, where is it? Oh, can't find it for the minute. I probably put it in my writing box. I have a big box of writing that I've already transferred to my laptop, so it's probably in there. But I've also been writing in notebooks. These are just like a speck of my stories. I'm writing what I tell people is 17 novels. Because I look at something like Wheel of Time, and Robert Jordan didn't live all the way to the end of it, and mine is longer than his, so it's like everything about my idea, it sounds impractical. But like, there's just been so many writers who are like, I've got this mountain of a series and I want it done, and I've got other ideas I can do in the meantime, but I find every time I think do something shorter, I do something else, and then that thing becomes its own thing. And then that just takes over. And I think, no, you had that main thing you were doing. You were making good progress on it. Keep doing that. But yeah, all of these are full of writing notes and things and transferring those over. But writing the words out, I wanted to categorize them into verbs, nouns, etc. Because it just strikes me as we've got all these writing books about narrative structure, but not one that's basically just like narrows down your options. I don't know. It might be because of my executive dysfunction that it's hard enough to write the story I want to write with the characters I want to write them in without stopping every 5 minutes to go, what kind of location do I want? Like, I can think of one or two and just go with the thing I thought of. But I guess a lot of perfectionism and a lot of editing comes from just not being able to look up a list of general options. I know people use the internet. I do think that's part of it. I really struggle with researching online. I find it overwhelming in a way that I genuinely think a book of categories would help. And part of that has been, I am literally writing my own writing book, which is currently only this thick and called the Almost Comprehensive Guide to Writing. And I say almost because we're never going to cover every minuscule thing. But even that just taught me that, like, chapters about setting will talk about environment. But you would think by this point the English language and the dictionary already has all of those environment descriptive words in there to start with. So why hasn't the dictionary been resorted into those categories? How often do you need to look up the definition of a word if that word is already within a larger category of things it's defined by? I don't know, it just seems like an odd way to go about word sorting. So I guess in a way my quest is to fix the dictionary, because it wouldn't be a definition glossary as a dictionary is. It would be a writer's general toolkit. And this is more about, I started with the general questions of who, what, when, where, why, and it developed into a full lot of theory. I've been studying storytelling for a long time, and I even had a writing mentor who I would constantly ask him questions, and like at one point he commented, like, Brenton wants to crack my brain open and basically just get every piece of information I know about writing down on paper. And I was always hoping he would write a book on writing, which I would then go, I'll just follow that. But he didn't, and I'm glad he didn't, because it forced me to think about it myself. And I've written my own as the book I wish I had while writing. And I still get bogged down because I'm ironing out parts. So again, none of this is like coming out next week. But these are all the different ways. I knew I wanted to learn more words. I struggled in school, and I knew that when I left, I promised myself that I would Google everything possible and learn everything I possibly could. But I found the problem there is Google is now more advertising than anything else. And even before, I found it a difficult engine to research with the way I think. Whereas I think if I start top down and say, here are the main categories of life. If you are stuck on what do I write, here's the general starting bubble. And then from there you can go to those chapters, and these are the kind of things that tend to pop up here. And then if you want more research, you can research those things on a really minor scale. But that I want that to be my mind map starting point. It's strange to me that in school we have subjects like humanities, science, and they have a general guide of what you need to learn in each subject. I guess I'm like, where is that for storytelling? So I knew I wanted to learn more words. I knew I wanted to write books that were already vast in concept, because my brain is a mind map, and I come up with the most, every idea I come up with turns into a series. But yeah, at some point I started just looking into linguistics, and it's almost like I want to start from the ground up and build it all back up again, because my brain got overloaded with all the options. The world is just so vast, and when people say there's no life guide, I made one for myself because there was too much housework to keep track of. And once I did it, it's this thick. It's huge. And once I did that and looked at that, I realized how much housework there is actually to do. And most people without ADHD can just do that. They just understand what they need to do and they do it. I just get so overwhelmed by choice fatigue that I want to know what my starting points are so I can creatively choose from them, rather than have my brain shut down on a blank and then wait 2 weeks to try and think of something. I don't know. It's easy to think to myself, well, just be more creative. But it's not, because I can come up with a million creative ideas, but actually being able to then mash them all into a solid idea I can work with is where my brain runs away from me and just comes up with too many disconnected ideas. And I end up with full series plans, because there's no way for me to grab all those things and go, okay, now I am going to go through this process and help categorize them with that. So yeah, instead of thinking, okay, I want this character over here doing this thing, I can think to myself, well, actually you need a location, and you needed this, and you needed that. Have you thought about those things? Well, no, my idea ran away with me, and actually if I keep those things in mind, won't. Yeah, it all comes back to overwhelm, and ironically, the best way I've found to tackle that overwhelm is to write it all down, get my information in a visual. If I'm aware of what I'm tackling, it is much easier to tackle it. So in that way, I want a book of words that are more conveniently categorized. I want a book on writing that covers all the things I've ever learned, and I want to write a novel series that I've been sitting on for a very long time. And part of that seeking the word journey is I kept thinking, surely someone somewhere has already made this. So far, what I've found is my auntie found me a use the right word guide, which is good, but effectively a thesaurus, but a much more useful thesaurus, the way it kind of organizes things. I have the color thesaurus, which actually was surprisingly good, because it all it does is colorize the title. So the titles stand out, and with ADHD, we get information overload. That's a good way of isolating the words from their definitions. I found this, I think I just like it because it's gold. But the Rogers Thesaurus, the Everyman edition, I do just like this because it's gold. It's not entirely useful. It's very, very dense and laid out. I also have the Oxford American Writers Thesaurus. This one is good, but again, it's every word categorized into other words like it. What I find is if I'm ever writing like, a character is in a house, and then I kind of get stuck because I go, well, I don't really mean a house. I mean this other thing. And then the thesaurus might say, well, here's other words for house. And I'm like, no, see, what I'm tripping up on is it's definitely a house, but I want to be more specific than that. It's not that I need a different type of house. It's that I almost go, well, what are my options within a house? Because I know what's in my house, but that doesn't cover what could be there. And I just find there's something about just a top-down approach of you know you have a house, but you don't want to get bogged down in what you're going to put in that house. You want to be able to just say there's this and this and this and move on and edit that later and then worry about what's in the house. You just need enough details to hand wave to get by, to get through your draft. And if I get bogged down in, wait, what do I mean there? What actually is here? What's around me? What's going on? I just get bogged down in details that like I could skip. But then I have the same problem later. I've skipped them without learning how to deal with that. And then it got to the point where yeah, it's huge. Yeah. So that just goes to show you how many words there are in the world. And I think that's why I don't necessarily want to make a word guide that big, although that seems to be what's happening. What I want is to have them more easily accessible. Because the thing about a dictionary that big is I can only find the word, or I can find other words for run, but I can't just find a category of movement type words. Right? Not just other words for run, but different ways to travel, different ways to, for things to rock about. Like, these are the things where I get really tripped up on the minute details when I just want to tell the story. Yeah, there is just something in my brain that a generic list of alphabetized words doesn't do the job I want when I'm looking to learn new words. And I know they say just read more books, but it requires me to read multiple books to come across a word to discover that I've learned that word somewhere. Whereas if I'm writing, I don't also then have time to go read 4 to 5 books with the purposeful intention of learning a single word. I want to be able to just look up that word, which I don't know yet, and learn it by looking it up. So if I want to look up words that are associated with house, not other words for house, but associated with the category of house, I don't want to have to look up house in the dictionary, and I don't want to go looking for words I haven't yet discovered in the dictionary because I wouldn't know where to look for them. I just want to be able to look up the category of things that I'm playing around in and hope that I find more words around that topic there. And also by writing the book, I will learn more words as I did just writing them out by hand. But ultimately, this is all in service of me wanting to be a better writer and feeling that I know, when it comes to plot and character, I find that is where my strength is. When it comes to description and word choice, I'm still bogged down and very basic. And that's something that it's hard. I don't know how to practice that because more and more, if I can write, they always say just keep writing, but if you keep writing, I'm going to keep writing the same basic words because that's all I'm going to know. I can read all the books in the world, but it's not going to jog my brain into being able to reach whatever category it wants to reach. It just, the way ADHD works, that instant creative word reach just isn't the same. I tend to just draft really basically, and then at best I could thesaurus some words afterwards, but I wouldn't be able to, I don't even have a word for it. I wouldn't be able to branch out via my story topic to discover more words through the story topic. I think too, this was just an excuse to show off all the writing books I've read so far, and all the classic books that I have read in full so far. I had quite a bunch that I have either half read or not yet read, and so I removed them just for this video. But like, no, those ones I've read in full. I have all my fantasy series. That's the other thing. I'm a fantasy series reader. So my brain works in long-term storytelling. It's very hard for me to just go, here's a bubble of story, like, which I can do, but my passion and genre is in long-running fantasy. So it just seems natural to me that I want to write a 17-book series. I started, years ago, in 2008 is the earliest I can find drawings of. But even then, I know that I was writing some of it before then. I know which year I showed people for the first time, and even that was a bit later. So 2000 and... it had to be before then. 2008 would have been... 2008 would have been year 10, and I was writing this back in year 8. So 2006 at the earliest that I can remember. I wrote an Elemental series, heavily inspired by Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball Z, a lot of the 90s anime that I still like to this day. So I've never changed the elements in them. I'm sick of the 4 elements. I had my own. They're, like, if you said they're not very original, they're very obviously, like, based on Pokemon types, and they've got Dragon Ball Z powers, and, like, it's very heavily, I wrote it in high school. But that story has stuck with me because while the concept in very shallow isolation was off Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball Z, it is very definitely developed with me, and it started as one book with way too many characters because it was just in school writing whatever I felt like, and reading that back is terrible. It's terrible. But I then got inspired by Avatar and Avengers, and like it taught me to... I already wanted to write a series, but I thought I was writing a trilogy because that's what you do. And then it just like stretched out because I almost was like, well, if there's too many characters, I'll cut some and I'll do this and I'll do that. And then was like, no, well, what if I did a story around each of them and they could have their own story? And that seemed like an impractical idea until I saw Avengers do it. And I know it's very tempting to say, well, just do what the Avengers did. But like, it's not... It has evolved with me where it was a trilogy for the sake of it. Then it became what I thought was 13 books, because that fit a structure. And I look at things like Series of Unfortunate Events and Way of Kings and even The Wheel of Time. And I'm like, it's been done. So like, it's a lot of work and it's definitely gotten on top of me, but it can be done. And then because I was studying story structures so hard, I realized that those 13 books, because of the way the elements split up, should really be 15. Like it made logical sense if you look at what I've done with it. And I don't want to give too much away because I'm not near finished. This is just a stating my intentions type thing. But it became 15 because I had 12 elements and then thought, well, naturally a 13th, you gotta have your, like, I want to say Captain Planet type, the ultimate element of all 12 put together is the 13th one. And then I realized, well, actually there'd be turning points in between. So it'd be 12 plus another 3, like one in the middle, one between, like 3, a trilogy of 3, turning point, trilogy of 3, turning point, trilogy of 3, turning point, trilogy of 3, and was then convinced it'd be 15, and I was happy with that because I had 2 characters that I felt weren't getting enough justice and really deserved their own stories. So that became then 15 stories, and I went, okay, it's a bit longer than most people have done, but it really does make sense for the structure I'm working with. And then the more I thought about it, the more I went, well, if it is 4-act structure, with turning points in between, it just makes sense to have an opening hook and a closing hook. Like, if you're gonna have the 12 elements, instead of, because I wrote book 1 in full while at uni, and that was an achievement in itself because I wrote 80,000 words, where my previous story that I'd ever written was, I think, not even 25 or 50,000. Like, it didn't get far at all. And it was a shorter thing, but, trial and error and things like that. Just being able to say, I'm going to write a full-length book, and did that, but that's still... that's draft 1. And I thought, well, maybe, there's an argument to be said. I should go back to that and edit that to know that it remotely works. But because I'm so convinced of the idea, and I know that book now played out as I wanted it. It's sort of, I started at book 1, darkness, as one of the elements. And it was 12 elements, 4-act structure, a turning point in between. But then by realizing, well, the turning points in between are all magic based, the 12 elements should be the 3 stories within each act. So then there really should be a magic-ish one at the start and the end to cap it off. Because if people come into the series and it's meant to be about the 12 elements as a whole, it's all well and good to make the 13th one, like all of the above, as a culmination. But now your culmination is the 12th story, and one of the elements was right in the middle where one of the magic turning points should go. So it just made sense to put that 12th element at the end, and that has worked for me since. But then the culminating one became the 16th story, and then I thought, no, I need one at the start, because say it does pick up and it does really well. When people say, well, what's it about? And I give you this story where they're just at school and like they're still, it made sense kind of as an opening, like a setup story. But now that makes sense as the setup to the first act of the four lots of the 12 elements. Whereas the opening hook had to be another culmination story, had to be, here's the ultimate element thing and what that's about, because ideally that's what people are going to know about. If anyone picks up the first book and goes, oh, it's just this kid using the darkness powers, people are going to go, yeah, no, and it's good, but like, keep reading, don't worry, it gets better. Like, I would hope that it's good and then gets better, but in itself, I wanted a more overall opening story. The one that's like, this is what the stories are about. And then book 2 is like, now let's set up the smallest story that's gonna go on through the arc. Like the first one is the hook story. The first one is, if you read nothing else, you have a good view of what this story is overall. Yeah. So, and then Brandon Sanderson came out with, so I hadn't read Way of Kings, and I was like writing draft, what was book 2 is now book 3, was like an exploring draft. And I was kind of writing the third one as well, like, all right, I think I've gotten a grasp of what the second one is. I now want to see if I can get a grasp of what the third one is. Like, I don't now need to have every draft finished. I just wanted to know, because I'm watching what George R. Martin has done, and I don't want to be the sort of person who hasn't finished. And this is a big mountain to climb, so I at least want to know I've got a good, strong grasp on every story before I go, here's the first one, hope there's another 16. But I've been working on this for so long, it'll be done or I'll be dead. One of those two things. And then it was funny, because I was like, oh, I really want like a long-standing elemental series like this. And then I found Brandon Sanderson became, from a writer who had been around for quite a while, to one of the most now popular names in writing fantasy. And he had his own lecture on storytelling, and his Way of Kings, the more I read into it, has like, with the fact that it's called Stormlight, like it's definitely not remotely the same story as mine, but I couldn't believe that that another writer had written people who can run on the winds and the storm stuff. And there's other things in there that I won't say for spoilers, but there were other stories I was writing. There was a story I was writing just about color, and then I read Warbreaker and was like, huh. I mean, again, Warbreaker is nothing like what I was going to do with it, but the idea of like people having different colored energies, I suppose is a bit Super Saiyan to begin with. But yeah, which is why I like Brandon Sanderson's stories. Like, they're all things that I was like, oh, cool, you know, I wanted to do something like that. So I'm so glad that exists. But yeah, the fact that then I hear Brandon Sanderson talking about how he's had these 10 books for ages, and he's so committed to this big epic that he's doing. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And then I watch how fast he writes, and I'm like, well, this is why I want to know I finished, because I can't hope to write as fast as he does, and I think his books are probably longer than mine so far, but when he's got 10 books and I've got 17, I want to learn how he's doing it. I want to learn to do what he's doing. You know, and I'll be me before I'll be him. But, like, you know, I don't want to be the next Brandon Sanderson. I want to be the next me type thing. But this is why I'm talking about all this stuff. I want to learn more words. I want to learn better prose. I want to learn how to finish things more frequently and more regularly and more consistently. I want to be a writer, and it's always hard to say that because for the longest time I said I want to be an actor because I thought I had to do something and that seemed the best thing I was at. And then I wanted to be a comedian because I thought, well, no, but I've practiced jokes all my life. I'd be really good at that. But then, like, I have migraines and the travel involved in that. And the migraines have gotten better and I'd like to go back to comedy a bit. But I was told comedy had to be my career and it kind of burnt me out on it. Whereas writing, even if I've got a migraine, I can jot some words down. Writing has always been the easiest backup when I'm sick, but at the same time, it's also something that I just really enjoy doing. I really enjoy studying storytelling. I really like meaning making, and I then really harshly criticize stories where they seem to think that the entire job is just, I write some rubbish down on a page, I make some people say it, I get paid. Like, they seem to be in it for the industry and for the fame and for whatever else, and forget they're meant to be sharing a meaningful experience. And I get mad at that because I think I treat it with such religion, I guess is the word, but like there is something really spiritual about storytelling that I think a lot of writers take for granted, but also a lot of companies take for granted in their writers. Like there are plenty of writers who would write something amazing if given the chance, but then studios will just steamroll them and go, yeah, write your words down, we need to start filming, just whatever. Like writers are really underappreciated, and yet I think there are a lot of, from what I've seen, and it's easy to say that from the other side of the camera, but I also see a lot of writers bragging about their work when it's bad. And this is probably more screenwriting than book writing, because book writing, a lot of book authors will take their time and understand that it's a process and they've got full control and they will make their book as good as possible. Whereas I think screenwriting is a lot more, you're crushed by the industry. Yeah, my current passion in life is writing. And I only say that because I enjoy drawing, singing, playing music just as much. But storytelling is the one I've researched the most, storytelling is the one I've practiced the most. Before that it was comedy, now it is writing. But even when I was doing the comedy, I was writing these books. I just figured the books were on the side thing because I wanted to please people and make them laugh. That was for them. This is for me. These stories are me. And yeah, they might not be done for a while, but they will be done. Yeah. Anyway, here's some here's all the writing books and classics that I like. And also, here's some other videos you can watch. Bye. Imagine when I'm out the other side of this. Like, 17 books is a lot, but if I get to the point where people are actually saying, what will you do now? Like, you're done, you've actually done it. What will you do now? And I'm like, are you kidding me? There were 17 of these. I'm good, I'm done. Nah, I got other stories on top of that. I got other things I'd love to do either in between or, like, write these in advance. Send them out. Have like one a year, even though they're already done. And then I can write other stuff while they're coming out. Because the other scary thing is you put all that work in, you do one series really well, people love it, and then you're like, well, time to die, I guess. Like, living is always making the best of the moment and appreciating the next thing. But also, like, what an achievement if I could. Like, I should just start publishing them, but I don't want to publish 3, realize that the book goes bad at 10, and then scramble for 14 books trying to fix it. I want to know that it's solid and good. And then if people still don't like it, that's taste. But I want to know I've really put my best foot forward and done everything I can to make this series work. And if it turns, maybe it's all rubbish, and it's always been rubbish, and it will turn out to be rubbish. But I will finish. That is the thing I need to do with my life. I'm also going to do a master's at uni, but hey, I don't do things easy. Seriously, bye!